Here I am with Mr. Brian Gates, who is one of our esteemed members of the Alive Partner community. I am Dr. Mario, founder and creator of the Alive Partner community, alivepartner.com, the Wanted Man Mentorship Program, the Heart-to-Heart female-specific mentorship program, and the 7-Day Stop Fighting Challenge. Today, I'm completely honored, and it's a huge privilege to be sharing with all of you in my community the presence of a gentleman who has been in our community for a long time now. And not only that, somebody who has been participating in numerous programs that we offer. Amongst them, he started with the Alive Partner course, which he has become a master of. And then he joined basically the rest of the time as a member of the Wanted Man Mentorship Program. I have received a lot of questions along the way and people messaging us directly about what is it to be in the program, even though I talk about this in emails and so on. So rather than me talking about it and me saying how great something is, I figure that the most powerful, honest, transparent, and sincere way to do that was to actually have somebody in an unscripted way talk about what the experience has been. So I want to welcome in the warmest of ways to my dear friend and community member, Mr. Brian Gates, to this conversation. And just wanted to ask him some questions so that he can actually share with you what this experience has been. So Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Mario. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for being here with us. The first thing that I wanted to ask you, Brian, is what specific things were you dealing with? Some people may think about it as struggles, challenges, perhaps. Some people may say problems. What things were you dealing with that basically brought you here and you said to yourself, I'm just going to give this a try?
So I guess it was about 8 months ago, maybe a little longer now. Time flies when you're having fun. But I had been going through a pretty rough patch. I got divorced, or in the process of divorcing, or was divorced. My ex-wife of 28 years. And things had been relatively contentious during the process. I had a falling out with my youngest son, which was difficult to navigate. I had met an amazing person in a long distance relationship, and our relationship had been going well, but I started to encounter the same types of issues that I had experienced prior, both with my ex-wife and in my interpersonal relationships in general. And basically, just kind of was on that hamster wheel, rinse, lather, repeat. My professional life was going very well. I had thrown myself into my work and honestly probably had some of the best professional success I've had in years. But what I didn't realize was how much I was suppressing and how angry I was. And it manifested itself in an evening one night where I lost my cool in a situation that was just unacceptable. And what really bothered me about it is the next day, after having a pretty good argument with this person, with my girlfriend, I realized it was me. And I realized that there was other things here going on that I was just not aware of, and that I had a lot of feelings that had been repressed all the way back probably to my dad, which I know it sounds like psychobabble, but it's not. It just I kind of made a decision that next day that this person was important to me, and that it was important for me to get into my own stuff and figure out what this was. And I've known Mario a little bit outside. So I knew I knew that there was a program that he was working on, and I'm not the type that's going to go to a traditional route, psychotherapist, any of that. That's just not going to happen. That's not who I am. But I decided I was going to give this a try. And, it started off probably in February of this year, and it's been one of the best things I've done. But it took that moment in time Some people call it rock bottom. Some people call it, the end of the road. I think it was more of a moment of clarity that, okay, it's time for me to understand where these things are coming from, and where else is this bleeding over in all facets of my life.
Ryan, when I hear you talk about having been able to have the capacity to identify some things at that point, you actually said, hitting rock bottom, that may be a different way of saying it for different people, or it means something different for different people. For anybody who's watching this and is also a man, and it's an alpha guy, a go-getter, a successful guy in many respects, what would you say are some of the things that lead you to identify that there's a rock bottom moment going on? Because as you well said, it's not typical for guys to kind of start looking for things, but there's millions of us who've been struggling with things, and it's really affecting not only our marriages, and it's really starts to spill over onto the professional side of things and the professional success, the financial aspect of succeeding, and so on. And everything gets really tangly, really, really just kind of mambo jumbo in there. So what would you say are some of the things that, as you think about other males in your life who are also successful as well, but you start to see and have the awareness of, like, this guy is going through this type, this guy is going through that stuff. If that person is listening so that he can understand what that rock bottom looks like, could you actually speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. I think it's different for all of us. For me, I've always used, I guess, the cliche, or the definition of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is the definition of insanity. Just is. And I've always been really good at that in a business setting, but never in a personal or emotional setting, which is kind of ironic now. But it's that feeling of that anger, in the moment, you're just kind of letting it go. But then the next morning, that oh God, I got to apologize. Like, this is my fault. Like, and I just kind of, I remember I sat up, I wound up spending the night away from my girlfriend at the time. I remember sitting up in the hotel room going, what are you doing, dude? Like, where did that come from? Why did it come from? But as I said, that feeling of, man, I've been here before. I've seen this act again before, whether it was deja vu, what I don't know what it was, but I could feel it in that moment that, yeah, I'm going down the same road with this, and it all kind of came rushing in at one point. Like, there's got to be a better way, and if it's out there, I'm a big proponent of, put a challenge in front of me, I'm going to figure a way around it. I think probably all of us have a lot of that. It's part of who we are as alphas. It's just, I'm going to figure this out, and it was probably my. I'm glad I did, but it was also scary. Like, all right, I'm going to have to, do some things that might make me a little uncomfortable in the beginning. That not outside. It's very hard for people who think like we do to be vulnerable, I guess is the word for it, and to kind of drop that wall and drop that. But people look to us to lead, look to us to be the one with the solution, not the one with the challenge. So that was it. But I knew at that moment, and it didn't go away. I guess that was the other thing. Like, immediately I was like, this is stupid. Like, I'll apologize. This will be fine. But all during the day, all the next day, it was just that voice in the back of your head going, no, man, you're onto something. Don't let it go. And, I would say it took me about 3 or 4 days to reach out, but over that 3 to 4 days, I could not shake the feeling of, this has got to get fixed. It's kind of, for you guys in the business world, it's that, you've got to make a decision. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough, but it's the right decision, and it's got to be done. And that's and at the end of the day, it will be better. That little bit of uncomfortable feeling, it's temporary. We're gonna get through it, and we're gonna come out better on the other side. This is the same thing. It's just I know for me, it was very difficult to admit to myself that this is what I need to do.
It's very powerful to hear from a guy like you who has achieved the things you have and who's had the successes that you have had and continue to have, which have been amplified now through the work, to be able to say, yeah, I had that fear, I felt this, but I knew inside of me that something had to be done, and it was a little uncomfortable. Boom, I'm going to do it. And then things have completely changed. So for somebody who doesn't know any of this work, could you please speak about, coming into the Wanted Man Mentorship Program and what that experience has been? Because that one of the things that is kind of funny about us is that we don't like anybody to tell us what to do. We hate to hear our partners tell us that we need to do some work on ourselves when we are kind of like, we're the solutions people and the go-to people. We don't want to hear it. We don't tend to be the ones gravitating to going to away retreats and going to the self-help book collection at Barnes and Noble or your local library. That's not really the comfortable zone for us. That's not the comfort zone. So what has this been like? Because the alpha guy, the guy who's a leader, coming into being in a space with another guy to kind of talk about what's not working, it's not really where we will rather be telling people what to do rather than to actually considering other things to do. So tell us a little bit about what was it like to come into the mentorship program?
Yeah. I think in the beginning it was definitely best way I could equate it is when you book a sales training for your team, and as the leader and your customer service, whatever, you're there listening. But let's be honest, and I'll be honest, I'm always evaluating the guy like this. I can take it. Like, what are you going to teach me? And I kind of came in a little bit with that, with my walls up, kind of. All right, what are we getting into? It was probably even more here because in a business setting, okay, I know the right terms to use. I know how to kind of conversate and be able to sound intelligent. With this, not so much. So I was definitely guarded in the beginning. There's no doubt about that. I was definitely evaluating Mario as a person first. It was easy to tell that we had a very similar look on life. Mario, obviously, you've been extremely successful business-wise. You've been successful in the coaching world. You've experienced all that. I had some business coaching, but never on a personal level. Quite frankly, I think I had 3 sessions when my marriage was ending, and I hated it, despised it. So I definitely came to this with, all right, we're going to try it. And I committed to myself that I was going to give it a full try, even if I wasn't down after the first one. So, but amazingly, I would say in the first 20 minutes of us just talking, it was evident that, okay, this is different. This guy knows what he's talking about. This guy is experienced things that I've experienced, both on a personal and professional level. This isn't about, my mom dropped me on my head when I was younger. It was just very, very easy. It was having a conversation, and it was interesting to hear somebody going through the same thing I was and being totally open about it. That's, I think, what hooked me immediately was that okay, there was that common connection that this guy, this isn't somebody who on a sales group, we say, those who can't do, teach. So we didn't have any of that. There was definitely, for the first 5 to 10 minutes of that conversation, I was hooked. And I wanted to get to know this program and Mario in just a better way, a different way to kind of harness or kind of give me a different set of tools to deal with some of the stuff that I had been going through.
Yes, you have been in the process, and it's been incredible to see your transformation and the power that you have harnessed as a man that you had inside of you and now grow it to such an exponential level. It's really remarkable. what if you were to describe what's been that process like to somebody who's like, as you said very correctly, there's this skepticism going on. It's like, what is this person going to teach me? What does he know? And you said it best, like the people that really need it most are the ones who are teaching it. So I mean, I completely can see that and sympathize with that. It's funny, but it's true in many ways for many people. But somebody who actually is very successful, it's typically very reluctant to look into other things because they're going to lean onto their success and they're going to be like, what does this person who doesn't do or understand my world has to teach me about that? Clearly, as you said, my background is different from most people out there. But nevertheless, please speak to what that particular person who's just like skeptic, like, who is this guy to be teaching me anything or trying to fix my marriage or trying to fix my life? Because I think that's a misconception about coaching. Like, I'm trying to fix you. But this journey in a life partner, and certainly in the Wanted Man Mentorship Program, has never been about like, let me teach you a lesson and let me fix you, Brian. Can you speak to that so that person who's got a very well-fed and healthy skeptic inside of him understands, not for me, but for somebody who can relate to that just as much as I can too, what that is like?
Yeah, and that's a way more articulate way, better way to say that than I was thinking. It it's not, you've challenged me, but you've never ever given me direction, or direction is the wrong word. You've never told me what to do, because people like that's immediately going to elicit a different response in most people like us. Um, the work, I mean, yeah, in the beginning it was a little bit interesting. It was outside my comfort zone. There's no doubt about that, but it wasn't hard. It you know, I think one of the things we as people or similar people in this community, we all know how to take the medicine and kind of grind it out and do what you got to do. And I think when I first started that, that's what it was. It was definitely, I was intrigued, but it was a grind. It was a grind for the first very short period, but still a grind. It quickly became something different. It came, nah, you know what? I want to read this. Wow. Okay. There is a different way to approach when I'm feeling anxious about something, or there is a different way to kind of feel into things or deal with emotions versus, bury them, push them down so that we don't have to deal with it. And I would say in the first two sessions, after the second session, the work was not difficult. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the live partner course. I thought that was amazing. For me, who has been accused of not necessarily having the longest attention span, I found it easy. And it was 30, 40-minute modules, quick. I listened to a lot of them on a plane. I travel a fair bit for work. But yeah, I would say to everybody, or to anybody thinking about this, you have to commit, and then you have to. It's kind of like a Netflix show, right? Maybe the first one's not great, but because you're just not comfortable. But get through the first one, because it gets way better after that, and way easier, and you'll be finding yourself like a good TV show, kind of running to do these things during the week. And looking forward to the conversations at the end of the week. Just it's life-changing, guys. There's no other way. There's no other word to use but that. And believe me, as I'm saying it, I'm laughing to myself, because probably as you, you're probably going, wait, really? Like that fast? Yeah, it's that fast. It's that fast.
Ryan, one of the things that men like us fear the most is that getting into the touchy-feely thing is going to somehow rob us from being alpha guys or becoming sissies or ending up wearing skirts and heels at the end of the day, and becoming softies and kind of like becoming yes men to our women. And so one of the counterintuitives about a man like myself talking about these things and teaching about these things is that the people who, the men who may be listening to this and thinking, well, am I going to end up being a softie, this and that? Can you actually speak to what has happened to you in terms of your male nature? Because as we know, it's got nothing to do with any of that. And in fact, it's the opposite.
No, that's for sure. That was Mario hit it right on the head. I mean, that was something definitely in the beginning. I was like, what are we doing here? Like, that's not me. I'm not touchy feely. I'm not, I'm probably like 95% of the people in this audience, but it's not about that. It's about understanding your feelings and understanding how to work through that and understanding how you communicate with other people. Like, that was one of the biggest things for me with this, was I didn't realize how poor of a communicator I was. And I'm in sales. It's, when I say poor communication, I mean with interpersonal relationships with people, both my children, girlfriend, people I that work for me in a company. I was very dictatorial, probably is the way to put it. And I was gonna tell you what you needed so we could get done, move on to the next one. And by learning how to feel that in me, the emotions that came up in me, because it was always a defense mechanism. I was that way because I didn't want to be challenged. I didn't want to feel like inferior to somebody who worked for me, or I couldn't talk to my children and kind of be dad, or my girlfriend, like, yeah, okay, like, this is the way things are going to work. And it really helped. No, it has not made me less of a type A. It 100% not. But what it has done is helped me cultivate better interpersonal skills and the ability to manage my own feelings that come up, and it's made me a better dad. Honestly, I think I've shared this with you, Mario, but my daughter made a comment to me very recently, like, "Who are you, and what did you do with my dad? And whatever you did with him, don't bring it. Keep this guy." So, and she's older, so it's okay. She can get away with that. But no, it's just made me more aware. That's the answer. It's made me more aware and present in people's lives, and in business, it's made me way more dangerous in the boardroom. So it's that's an ancillary benefit, but it's definitely a benefit.